Hello and welcome to the BA Ed Partnership Online video to support the Year 2 school experience. My name is Cara Broadhurst and I'm the Assistant Director of the BA Ed, and I'm going to be talking you through this short video. Just a note before we start, for any of you who are new to mentoring with us, in terms of terminology, our trainees and students are referred to as Reading Partnership Teachers, and as such throughout all our documentation they're referred to as RPTs, as that's a lot quicker to say. The other term to bring to your attention is Blackboard, which we also refer to as BB sometimes. All of the documents that I refer to today are on Blackboard, and the password and the username are the same. You need to type in IOE Partner 1, all one word, all lowercase. I'd like to start just by giving a bit of context for the Year 2 placement, so you know where our RPTs are at in their learning and what previous experience they've had. This is their second placement of 3 block placements. So last year they did a paired placement. This year some of the RPTs are working in pairs again, and some are working individually, so you'll know which you have. The implications for that are they may need different sorts of support. For those of you who've got a pair in your classroom, you'll be carrying out a balancing act between encouraging them to use their paired status as a useful tool to give feedback to one another and support each other, but at the same time you'll be having to find ways to help them be independent of each other, particularly as they get into the latter half of the school experience. If you have a RPT working individually, then do please be aware that they actually may need additional reassurance, because it is the first time they're working on their own. They may lack a little bit of confidence, and they may need tweaks to the requirements, in that the school experience guide, which tells them about the placement requirements, is written for those working in pairs, which is the majority. In terms of Year 2 development, this year they've been working on various things, but particularly we've done work on medium-term planning, i.e. planning units of work or sequences of learning rather than just individual lessons. They've conducted some research into why pupils make progress. Each group looked at different areas and different approaches, but overall that's pupil progress, and the fact that we are accountable for that and that the approaches you choose have an impact on that has been quite a key feature of this year. And finally, formative assessment has been the other thing that we've done a lot of work with the RPTs on. As a result of those foci, Standard 2, Teacher Standard 2, which is about being accountable for pupil progress, is therefore quite a focus for this placement. One of the ways that we hope that the RPTs will be able to show progress towards that standard and evidence it is by use of impact profiles. They're asked to track 2 pupils, one in English and in maths, and actually make detailed notes about the starting point of those pupils when they start with you on day 1, and then make weekly notes based on their marking and feedback and assessments they do with those pupils, as to what progress those pupils are making in very small incremental terms, so that they can talk about those pupils at their tripartite meeting and show evidence that their teaching and their assessment for learning techniques had some kind of impact, or positive impact I should say. I'd also like to just raise your awareness that Teaching Standards 5 and 6 remain the most challenging standards for our trainees to accomplish. Standard 5 is the one around differentiation and SEN provision, and Standard 6 is the one that's mainly about assessment, both formative and summative. Finally, just before I talk about the mentor role, I'd just like to bring your attention to the fact that many of our RPTs will be using public transport, as our partnership area is very wide and not many of them have cars. Some of them are actually reliant on lifts from trainees at other schools nearby to yours. So we do expect them to have very professional standards of punctuality, but in their first few days, as they work out their routines and see actually which buses are reliable and that kind of thing, please do be understanding. And as always, I'd just like to put in a plea for you to consider if there is anyone at your school who might perhaps drive near the station on their way to or from work, who might be able to give the RPTs a lift, even just part the way. That would be really helpful for you to consider that. Okay, in terms of the mentor role, that begins with a diagnostic time, and in your mentor guide you will see that that is the first 2 weeks of the placement. The mentor guide is in your pack, and in many ways it's the most important document for you, and we hope it's useful. People have asked for the checklist that's in there, they've found that useful in the past, and so forth. It doesn't just have a checklist in though. There are appendices with example feedback forms and example other documents that I would ask you to read, particularly if you've not worked with us before. The other larger document in the pack is the School Experience Guide. That's the one that's written for the RPTs as the audience. It tells them what lessons they need to teach, what the requirements are, and so forth. If you could look through that as well, that would be very useful, as reading the two in conjunction works well. So as I say, the diagnostic time is from the moment that the RPT starts in your school up until Friday the 29th of April, that first fortnight. If you feel that your RPT or your RPTs, if you've got a pair, are ready to take on block teaching responsibilities and get stuck in, as it were, earlier than that end of that first fortnight, please do let that happen. Only if they feel ready and they're asking to do so, and you feel that they're ready, and they've seen you teach the subjects that they're proposing to teach, then there's no reason why they shouldn't get stuck in. Just to bring to your attention, Friday the 29th of April is the day that they're scheduled to have their pre-block tutorial, when they come and talk to their supervising tutor about their preparations for the placement, show them the work and the planning that they've been doing, and we offer support. We are not actually designating that as a day out of school necessarily. We're saying that both yourselves as mentors and the RPT should be flexible. So if the tutor needs to see them on campus for that tutorial, it may be that you release them for the whole day and they come for a tutorial in the morning and they can work in our resource base in the afternoon and make use of that. Or it may be that they come into school with you for the morning and then the tutor is seeing them in the afternoon back here. Or it may be that the tutor wants to drop in and see them at school for the tutorial. So please do whatever works best for you as a trio. In the diagnostic fortnight, as I say, there is a checklist which I'll leave you to read, but the three really key things on that checklist to achieve in this fortnight are sharing of assessment data with regard to the pupils. The RPTs need to know where the pupils are at in order to plan for their learning, so that's very important. Secondly, having a meeting about planning in terms of the planning content and topics and units that will be covered by the RPT during the 5-week block placement. We are aware that obviously the term has begun, and some of you will have already produced sequences of learning and so forth for this term. But actually, if the RPTs can have their opportunity to do their minimum requirement of planning one subject's medium-term plan, that would be really, really helpful. It's a requirement that they show evidence that they can produce a unit plan for any foundation subject or science as part of their training. Finally, you'll notice that we ask them to have an induction into any phonics scheme your school uses and practices around arranging phonics teaching, and also an induction into any mathematics calculation policy. Both those things save misunderstanding later. If you are a junior school, rather as opposed to a primary school, and phonics is not taught in your school, you will need to support your RPT or RPTs in arranging to visit the nearest infant school to do the small phonics requirement that is part of this placement. Okay, the mentor role splits into 4 distinct parts. First of all, there's the weekly meeting. We ask that that's held near the end of the week if possible. It does take slightly longer if you have a pair of RPTs, because we'd advise you do 30 minutes with each RPT, because it's about talking to them about their journey, their targets, what they need support with. So it's very personal reflection. However, because if you have a pair, you are getting double payment, so you can arrange cover for that meeting if that suits you better. As I said, it's for reviewing how they have got on in their teaching development, and also looking ahead to set targets and plan when observations might be done and that kind of thing in the following week. To support the meeting, there is a weekly reflection form, which is something you fill in, and we really do suggest you fill it in during the meeting as you're talking. Make notes, use bullet points or whatever, and so it's not extra work for you to do at a later stage. I'm just going to show you that form now. It's here. As you can see, there is a space at the top for the targets the RPT had from the previous week to be reviewed, and that's something that's really been shown to make quite an impact on how much progress an RPT makes. Targets which are usually about 3 from the previous week, if they remain the same and they're constantly ongoing or not yet achieved, then usually it means that the target needs refining, making smaller, more achievable within 1 week, or potentially the RPT needs more support. Either way, it needs looking at if the target is remaining the same. There's then a space for the RPT to write their comments, which they do after the meeting. The space for your comments, as I discussed, and spaces for you to put, for you both to agree new targets for the forthcoming week. Please do note that filling in the boxes at the very bottom of the form, where the 2 questions are there about progress, is very important. We have to be able to show if there are any concerns about an RPT making progress, that we did tell them that they were not meeting requirements, and that we have done everything to support them in making those the progress that they need to do. Okay, I'll just go back into the PowerPoint so that we can move on to thinking about the second part of the mentor role, which is to observe your RPT. We ask for 1 written lesson observation per week per RPT, and there's a feedback form for that. That's in your pack, but it's also downloadable from BB. Please use the same feedback form for every lesson you observe, except for phonics. If you do observe a phonics lesson, or a colleague in Key Stage 1 observes a phonics lesson for you, then there is an individual feedback form designed purely for phonics. If you could also take the time to read the lesson feedback appendix. Do you remember I said in the mentor guide there are some examples in the appendix? Then that will show you what we are aiming for in terms of feedback, in terms of how subject specific it should be, and how it needs to really encourage the RPT to reflect on their lesson. Whether it went particularly well or particularly poorly, reflection is the key. In fact, I would sum it up as remark on the positive things, make sure they know there was positive things in their lesson, make sure there's a focus on the pupil learning and the specific subject learning, what occurred, what was successful and not, and make sure it starts them off thinking that whatever you write kickstart them, makes them question something that they did. Third aspect of the mentor role is to support the trainees while they're working with you and planning for your class. A good model is to share and discuss your own plans that you would have used last year or perhaps a scheme or whatever before the RPTs then draft their own lesson plans with their own more detailed ideas. They are at the moment inexperienced in linking sequences of learning together and will need support with that, although they've had lots of experience of planning for individual lessons. The overall message with supporting them with their planning is wherever an RPT is performing on the scale of, whether you think they are performing exactly where you'd think a year 2 should be, or whether you think they're actually quite weak or quite strong, we need to start from where they are at in terms of supporting them to get them then to where they need to be. So if they need more support, by all means give it to them. I'll talk in a moment about how you can record that. We also have a Principles of Mentoring card, which is the red thing in your pack, which should support you in understanding the ethos that we have when we're working with our RPTs and trying to support them. Finally, the fourth part of the mentor role is to formally assess the RPT, and there are only 2 points at which you need to do that. The first is the interim point halfway through the 5-week block. So that is Wednesday the 18th of May is the interim point. So there is a survey link that you will be sent just shortly before that, and we ask that you complete it by 4 p.m. the day before. It's really for you to feed back to us about your RPT, reassure us if everything is okay, and ask for support and let us know if everything is not quite as it should be. Absolutely vital that we have that information so that we can then come and support you in the second half of the placement. We also ask that at that same time you ask the RPT for their formal assessment form, which is called the AOP, and you fill in the interim tab, which is purely formative. The grades do not get recorded anywhere else. The whole point of filling them in and talking them through is that the RPT gets to discuss them with you and can ask questions about, okay, well, why have I not got such a high grade in that particular standard? What do I need to do to improve? The second assessment point is right at the end, in the final week, where you'll fill in that same form again, but this time you'll be filling in the final grades. And we ask you draft those and write those provisionally on the form, or type, it's an electronic form, type those before the tripartite meeting, excuse me, which is the assessment meeting in that final week. And then the tutor will come to that meeting, you'll all discuss the grades and that they should be ratified, and you can then email it to us. Quick thing about the formal assessment, because it is quite a responsibility, and I know that many of you have commented that to us before. To support you with that, there are grading criteria statements. They are on the AOP itself, right next to the standard, so you can see what we expect a year 2 who is working at the appropriate level to be doing. But if you prefer to have them on a separate document, then they are available on Blackboard. These grading criteria statements, they look like this. So this is the standard 1 page. As you can see, if I just circle here with the arrow, this statement here is the performance statement for someone working at year 1 level. Over here is where you need to be looking to see what year 2 performance is expected to be. And then if you scroll down, or if I scroll down, you can see you've got the same thing again for the next teaching standard. So looking at the year 2 statement should help you. The grades that we award are either W, which is working towards the year 2 statement, M, which is meeting the year 2 statement, or E, which is exceeding. So hopefully that allows you to see how the grades fit together with the statements. Okay, we're going to now just move on to a little bit about support, but I will just pick up on that final point that's just come up on your screen. The overall SE grade, after you've graded all 9 standards, is the most frequently occurring of the 9 grades that you've given. If your RPT is one that does need additional support with planning or with anything else, please ensure you fill in a standard booster form. So that likely means that they're working at grade W for at least 1 standard. And talk to us about that. Always consult the supervising tutor, partly to let us know, but also because they can help you. They can actually help you write it. They can come into school if needed, or you can write it together via email or the telephone. What you put on the standard booster form is really an outline of the support that's going to be given, or it might be defined success criteria to help the student really see in black and white exactly what it is that you need them to do each time they teach a lesson, or each time they bring the children in from the playground, or whatever it is that's causing the problem, so that they can then really focus on following those success criteria. As with filling in the questions at the bottom of the weekly reflection, it's really crucial that if your trainee is in this position and needs this support, that you do fill in one of these forms. We have to have evidence that we have offered them support. There is an example form in the appendix of the mentor guide next to the other example forms. Please remember, we grade our RPTs against where they are at in their training, i.e. looking at the criteria statements, not against experienced teachers. Okay, I'm right near the end now, just a couple more slides. I just want to draw to your attention the fact that we do have the challenge tasks. All trainees are asked to carry out a few school-based tasks when they're in school to support their development, but we now have additional challenge tasks that are optional for any RPT that wants to do them. Your RPT's tutor can indicate to you if we know that they're an RPT that should be capable of engaging with those, but there is no ceiling. All RPTs can choose with your support to have a go at some or all of the tasks to help themselves develop. Teaching PE, please just be aware that students cannot teach PE without a qualified teacher present. So whereas you might leave the room during certain other lessons an RPT is teaching, even if it's just for a short while, with PE there needs to be a teacher in the room at all times. And also to be aware that because PE is such a multifaceted subject with so many different strands, it is actually an important one to try and help your trainees get as much experience with as possible, because they can be at risk of missing teaching in one or two of the strands completely during their training if that's not monitored. Okay, well, what do you need to do now? If you haven't yet looked at your RPT's targets and review from their Year 1 placement, please do that. They will have brought their professional development portfolio into school with them on the first day, and all that information is in there. That will help you get to know what they are like. You can obviously talk to them as well to find out what kind of person they are. Think about what background they have, what gender they are, what age they are. How might that impact on the kind of decisions they make or how they present themselves as a trainee teacher to you. Find out from your RPT who the supervising tutor is and make contact with the tutor if he or she hasn't actually already done that anyway. And take a look around here on Blackboard. All of the forms that I've mentioned are available in the BA Ed section, and I'm presuming you've accessed Blackboard, as to get to this YouTube video you had to go via Blackboard. So all that really remains is for me to wish you every success with your mentoring experience, and to thank you for watching this video.